Hi there, my friends. So I'm Prajna, and this is my channel. Thank you for listening in. I want to talk to you about the different dynamics that happen within our nervous system or can happen, and how these get resolved, and how we can kind of track and notice how our nervous system is developing to come into a place of more balance, harmony, which is registering and aligning with who we are in our beingness. Like in that place of being able to digest life and be in life, to rest and digest, and be able to be available to new experiences. So I want to talk about this by way of telling a story of something that recently happened with me. And I'm not really great with terminology, but we're really talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, which is to the prey, and the sympathetic nervous system, which is predator. And so we have both of these dynamics happening in our nervous system all of the time. We need both. And there are times when one is going to be stronger than the other, and there are times when um, one may become so strong that we actually leave our bodies, check out, freeze. So we often talk about this in relation to a trauma response of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So this isn't going to be a course in science or biology, but I always share from my lived experience. So just recently, and some of you who know me, or if you don't know me, I highly recommend that you check out my new book, Edge of Grace. I actually just got a review back from a very reputable publisher, and I'm feeling a shot of confidence about how I'm developing my craft of writing. So it's getting some really great reviews. It's on my website. Like right now, it's still in advanced reader promotion. But if you went to prajnaohara.com, you could become an advanced reader if you like, and just contact me through that website. But that ends on October 14th. And then after that, once it's launched, it will be sold for full price unless there's some other special that happens. But now is the time. But anyway, that gives you a lot about my background. And that story, that one of the stories that I tell in my memoir, has to do with the birth of my daughters, which really turned out to be, the first one was beautiful and harmonious and ecstatic and joyful and natural in all ways. I had a home birth, and required very little support. There was the intelligence of my body and and my baby's body. We knew what to do, and this is actually the case all the time, unless perhaps somebody has been conditioned to be afraid of birth, which there's a lot of conditioning in our culture around birth and around women's bodies and the choices that we get to make. And then we have this incredibly huge overlay of the industrialized medical complex, which has its own agenda of interventions and different kinds of fears and conditioning. So that's, an outer structure. And then there's our inner structure within our nervous system, with how we internalize different messages within our culture, which can impact how we are, and very much so, in our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system, like how they register information, how they respond to information, and you can't control like how your nervous system responds to a situation. Like, anyway, so in my situation, my twins, it was very much a hospital takeover, and a lot of things, interventions happen that really didn't need to happen. And I can see that in retrospect. But at the time, because of how things went, my nervous system was in prey, so much that I really left my body, and I was I was being preyed upon in a way. Now you wouldn't think like that in a medical system, but I was being coerced into doing things that I was overpowered, and I, wasn't able to have my midwife come in, and all of these different things went down. And so didn't have my power. And that's what happens. And there's a certain degree of checkout and survival that happens. But the nervous system registers this as, being held in captivity against your will. And the nervous system can then come into different environments and have a groove that was inlaid during a time of trauma. Kind of, our we get patterns, grooves of patterns inlaid within our system that, without us consciously choosing, we may behave in a certain way because there hasn't been new information received in the nervous system. So these patterns can be unfurled, and smoothed out, kind of like, on a record player when there's a, um, a nick, and it will just keep repeating over that same, uh, the place where there's, I guess, what do you call it? We don't see record players that much anymore, but, and it will repeat itself and repeat itself until that kind of gets smoothed out. And then the groove, it's not inlaid in that same way anymore. And this happens over time. So I don't even know how long I'm going, but I have a lot of mixed feelings right now because I have been tracking my own nervous system for quite some time. I am a body centered psychotherapist, so I do a lot of tracking just naturally. And, there was a long period of time in my life where I felt kind of hyper vigilant and, being on guard and looking and checking, and my nervous system wasn't really resting. Oh, that's not the case. It hasn't been. And there's been periods when there's been times where I feel really embodied, and other times where there may be things that kind of have me off my game, like, so to speak. So, anyways, just the other day, my daughter required going to the emergency room, one of my twins, and she's severely injured from her birth. Well, they were 1 pound when they were born. So she had a massive brain injury, was resuscitated twice. And, so a doctor who doesn't know her can read this report. And then it's interesting, like, how information gets interpreted through different frames, different lens. And then, then all these cautionary notes come in. And that did happen in this situation. But, anyways, she was with her particular day nurse, and then I had to meet them there. And of course, they want to do all these tests to find out what was happening. But what brought her to the situation in the first place was a bunch of vomiting, and then she, excuse me, appeared to have seizures. But it's still just the appearance of that. We're not, like, really sure because she's complicated and she doesn't have language, can't really say what's going on. But me, as her mom, knows her, that she's very sensitive. And if there's a lot of stimulation going on in the environment, that part of what she might do is shut down, so she's going to check out for a little bit until her system can rest and digest, and then she's available again. So, was she having a seizure? It's really not certain. But did they want to treat her as if she was having seizures? Yes, because that's something, a medical diagnosis or term that can be treated. So, they wanted to have me admit her, and they wanted to give her this uh, anti seizure medication, which I had never heard of, and I didn't have time to research yet, so I disagreed with that. I didn't want to go along. And the cool thing, anyways, we were there for like more than 8 hours, and they gave her every test possible, but couldn't find anything wrong except a high blood count. So what that meant to me is that her system was throwing off, when, like, animals do this in the wild. Like when there's been a kind of a shock or they've been under threat, like when that situation is over, like they might play dead, but not really be dead because it's then whoever the predator is might think that they are and then leave them alone. But then when they know the coast is clear and they can get up again and they get up slowly and they prowl about and start checking if it's safe. They're checking for safety. And then when they know that they're safe, they shake and they jump and they shake and they just clear their field. And then the nervous system registers safety, rest, and digest and can assimilate and come back into itself, just like balance. So I really feel that was what was happening for her. And then it was also happening for me. So she was checked out for a while. She just was staring into space and was non responsive. And that was scary because I hadn't seen her like that before in a very long time. Saw a lot of things when she was a baby in the NICU, but this was new for this. She's 26 years old. So she was flaccid and her head was just kind of stuck in one direction like this and not looking and not responding to anything. So what I did, because I'm trained in cranial sacral therapy, is I just went to hold her head like I have many times before to listen to her brain, listen to the movement of the energies in her body. And even just holding her head like that, I could feel things begin to slow down. And I could like let my breathing pair with her breathing, so we're like kind of coupling. And she started to very slowly move her head kind of back to center. And she was still flaccid and not like really responsive yet, but she wasn't doing what they were calling a potential seizure. That wasn't happening. I have an itch on my nose, excuse me. So they wanted to continue the testing, and I went along with that because I also wanted to see could they find out anything from doing all of these different tests. No COVID, no this or that. And she did a CAT scan. Heart was fine. All her vitals were fine. And then later the blood culture came back and it showed that maybe some kind of infection, like was related to the skin. So anyway, after 8 hours, the doctor comes in and he reads all the different reports. Very nice man. And so he's saying that his recommendation is for me to admit her, and so they can continue to observe her and keep her overnight. And I just was like, no, no, my nose is still itching. Ah! I was like, no, not gonna happen. No, 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 no. And so then he's like, well, I think you're putting her at risk. And I said, well, I think I'd be putting her at risk if I leave her here because, I know her. And I know that as soon as everybody walked out of the room, that she would rest. And she'd almost, she was just about sleeping. And then there'd be the beeps, the loud noises. I turned the lights off to have it kind of, still it was bright in there because it was pure daylight at the time. And there's all these, loudspeakers banging on the door for the next tester to come in. And, so that would get her jumping again. And she just needed to be in quiet and in fresh air. So I didn't like say everything. I just like what it was tracking myself because I wanted to see could I stay in my power and in my confidence in that I know what's right for my daughter in this situation and not let myself once again get overpowered or coerced or convinced to do something that I know didn't seem right. So that doctor left, sent another doctor. So when that doctor went out of the room, I shook and I jumped up and down. I was like, all right, good, you got this. Get ready for the next round. And then a different team of doctors came in, or a nurse and a doctor, and then trying to convince me of the same. And I just was like, no, well, you're putting her at risk. They say, well, life is a risk. And it's the risk I'm willing to take. I mean, I think for me, it's a greater risk to leave her here because you don't know her and she needs me. Wow, this darn nose. It's because I got my hair cut today and I think I'm getting loose hair. But anyway, so then in the third time, the doctor came back, and this time came with her day nurse to see if she could convince me. I was like, wow, that's interesting. And after he went out, I still stuck to my no. And I said to her after he went out, I said, I'm feeling a bit coerced and bullied, and like they're trying to make me feel bad, like an irresponsible mom. And then feel like you're joining in with that. And she said, no, I'm just saying, like, if it were my child, this is what I would do. And I said, well, I understand that, and I can appreciate that and respect that, but this is my decision and this is my child. And I really don't need, to feel like I'm being ganged up upon. So we ended up leaving, and then as soon as I got her home, whatever symptoms were happening were just disappearing, disappearing. And I had her sleep with me in my bed at night, and she sweated through the entire night, drenched everything that she was wearing, drenched my bed. And when she got it in the morning, she didn't have a fever or anything, and she was able to eat, got her cleaned up. And she was not all the way better yet because tends to have high tone, so she was still kind of arching her back and doing things like that. So not comfortable yet, still uncomfortable. But then and she still had a rough night that following night to sleep. But yesterday, she was really so. I mean, I'd say pretty clearly back to herself, like her happy little self, and she's got her own little inner world going on of comedy and cracking jokes and things like that. So she's back to that and laughing, and she feels really happy. And I feel happy. And I think that the main reason that I feel happy is that I got to, like, I feel like I'm going to sneeze now. This is so weird. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, it's the haircut. Oh, it's so itchy, and I wanna sneeze, excuse me. Well, getting back to the parasympathetic, which is the prey, when you feel that you're being preyed upon, and the sympathetic is the predator. And both are necessary. So what I just wanna say, so I was able to observe my nervous system and that I was able to stay in my body, not leave, not do flight, but I could stay and I could disagree confidently. And I wasn't passive and I didn't feel afraid at all. And so this is like a super huge accomplishment. And I share this with you because all of us have trauma at different times and in different forms, whether it be in intimate relationships, whether it's a medical thing, a birth experience, or an accident of any sort. Maybe it's something that's repeated itself. And maybe it's something that's still unconscious and you're not even aware of it, but you find yourself in a pattern. And often that is related to relational trauma that had happened earlier in the life. Well, all of this, like our nervous system is kind of encoded with these messages. And what I want to encourage from this is that your nervous system, like your brain, is always changing and can develop. Like we don't need to be stuck in an old pattern. So for me, it's been many years of tracking myself and being willing to take a risk and to show up in environments maybe with a friend or with support and with resources and tools that I didn't have before, kind of like where you desensitize yourself to arenas that may have been threatening to you before. You don't have to go it alone. And it's kind of like we can always look around for it. We check for how we're feeling and see if it's in sync with how you're feeling in your body. So letting it register that you have this kind of the information is coherent. And that's what happens is you start to develop a coherence between the inner and the outer. So it doesn't mean that we jump into places that have been frightening to us in the past. No, we go slow and we don't even, we just track ourselves, how our nervous system feels. And there's a lot of different things that we can do, but I don't really have time to go into that, right now. But to work with somebody, I've done a lot of writing and I have a course coming up and it's called Generative Wisdom, because I feel like when you have an experience like this and it's generative wisdom, it really is because you're also shifting an archetype that you've carried in your unconscious or in your psychic about who you are in a certain situation. So a new archetype is emerging. So this course that I'm going to be offering, we're going to be looking at all the prey and the predator. We're going to look at the nervous system. We're going to learn to develop capacity to track and to stay in our system. And we're going to do some breathing and meditation practices. We're going to do a lot of witnessing and have this group dynamic happening where healing and learning and connectivity, of how we're all connected and that web of influence that we can have on each other, that is magnified by 50% when we come together in a circle and safety is created. So, safety is key. And so I kind of was carrying on a lot. I also just, after all of being through all of that, today I got a really good, huge piece of great news. And also, my daughter is doing very well, but I'll share that for another time. We're getting long here. So, thank you for watching. And I hope that my own personal story is helpful to you and that you can harvest some wisdom from that for yourself. Yeah. So it's really good to be here with you. Thank you for tuning in. If you like, I love your comments and see you next time. Ciao for now.